Akwaba, Laureen.
Merci. Thanks, Moulay.
How are you?
I'm great. Good to be here.
A lot of people that probably knew each other would be extremely surprised to see us in the same room.
Absolutely.
But we do it for the industry, like I said.
Definitely.
That was the goal of the podcast, is to have long-form discussion on important topics. And you and I never had the opportunity to discuss. Luckily, we met in Marrakesh.
Yes.
A few months ago for an IFC event about creative industry, and we got to catch up over a long ride, and that's when I realized that the things we discussed should probably be said in front of everyone, for people first to realize what changed, because I think you learned a lot since you arrived and you changed a lot. So I think being the one that came after you, because for those that didn't know, my infamous claim to fame was making an article worrying about Laureen and her experience and what happened with Birimian. And now I want to give you the opportunity also to explain and have people learn from what you did. So
no, excellent. And I thank you. I'm really grateful and thankful.
No problem.
For that opportunity, because I think, at the end of the day, time always tells.
Exactly. And
right? And what happened like 2 to 3 years ago. And
yes, 3 years ago. Yes, you're right.
3 years ago. And I think you and I both completely change our vision of the industry, our positioning, and also our approach to the industry.
Sure.
So I think that ride in Marrakesh, and I'm really grateful to IFC also.
Exactly. we made that happen. Exactly.
In the same car.
Exactly.
Was a great experience.
Thank you.
Because I think I realized why you didn't understand what I was doing.
Exactly.
And I think I realized why you did what you did.
Exactly.
But what you don't know is that your article was actually the beginning of our total shift and transformation with respect to our strategy.
Really?
Yes, because I've realized that through your article, our positioning, the initial one, which was the one of a private equity fund dedicated to African heritage brands.
Yes.
So to really simplify our approach at the beginning, our strategy at the beginning was to invest in brands through equity. So taking equity participation, becoming a shareholder of those brands, and putting in place the kind of same mechanism that we will see in the traditional private equity industry. So board, reporting, and some kind of mechanism that was quite
Exactly. So can you, just for those that don't know you, re-explain what is Birimian Ventures and especially who you are? Because part of the reason I wrote the article is that you're probably one of the most experienced person in the field of private equity in Africa that I ever met.
Thank you.
So I think it's important for people to realize that that was also the reason why when you say what you said, you had the prior benchmark in head, I think. You're not like... And I think that's also part of the things that explained the situation. Was I was surprised that someone with so much experience, like apart from what was happening in reality.
Yes.
So can you explain to people what is Birimian and what did you do before? Because people don't know.
So I would say I would define myself as a private equity or a seasoned executive in the financial services sector in Africa. So I've worked in the private equity field for more than a decade, actually close to 15 years. And my role was really to advise big companies or small African companies in their investment strategy and also to invest in them to support their long-term development. So I started my career at Proparco, which is a subsidiary of the French Development Agency.
An investor of mine.
An investor of yours. And before, by the way, I was at Lehman Brothers, so in London.
Oh, you are in Lehman?
Yeah, until the collapse. And this was the tipping point when I decided to dedicate myself to
Africa, rather.
Africa and a career with impact. So hence Proparco, which is dedicated to impact investing on the continent. And it was an amazing experience because I've worked in the financial services industry, investing in bank, and insurance companies, and in the financial services industry. So this is where I really understood how our African economies work. The different kind of cycle, and also how our banking sector and financial institutions work. Because in our industry, and this is very important, what people tend to forget is that there is no free money.
I like that.
So when you invest in a bank, you take the stake of how important it is to respect your fiduciary role. So the money that you have as a bank is not your money. is the money that you collect from depositors and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
I take the example of a bank, but it's the same for every financial institution, including BRN, and I'll come back to this at a later stage. So after Proparco, I joined Amethyst, which is a private equity fund.
Yes.
Created by the former leading team of
Proparco. Yeah, we heard
with an association with the Edmond de Rothschild Group, and I was in charge of this strategy into the financial services industry.
Okay.
So investing in bank and financial institution, going at their board, making acquisition for them, so supporting the growth. Yeah. So I would say that over that decade of experience, I was deeply embedded into the financial services industry.
Yeah. So you've been in
no financial or professional commitment to the creative industries.
Yes, not at all.
But a strong passion for it.
Yeah, so you liked it. You were a customer already, I think.
I was a customer already. So whenever I was going to Nigeria, to Ghana, and to all the kind of the other African cities, hotspots of our continent, I was making sure that I could buy some African designers. And I'm talking about the time when we were 2016, 2017, when it was the beginning of the African luxury. So when brands like Christy Brown were actually, start to skyrocket, and when you could identify yourself as an African female, I would say an African woman, really loving luxury, you could identify yourself with African luxury, which was not the case before.
Yes, true.
Those brands that we had in the past were not really, I would say, modern and adapting.
I agree. It was very also also men directed a lot.
Exactly.
You were liking a lot of,
So when I settled down in Côte d'Ivoire,
okay, so you came back.
I came back to open the office of Amethyst from Paris in Abidjan. So the first regional office, and we raised the first locally raised private equity fund. I was flabbergasted with that creativity. Okay. I was really impressed by the fact that Dior, for example, was like
coming to Senegal,
croisière in Côte d'Ivoire with Pateo. I was really impressed by all that talent, Loza Merliambo, all those brands that you could see. And when you see that Beyoncé, for example, was wearing Loza into one of her spots, I was like, okay, wow, something is happening.
Okay, so that's why you felt it.
So
that was when?
That was 2000. It started in 2016.
Okay.
So from 2016 to 2020, I basically matured the idea into, okay, what would be the key investment thesis? How do we approach it? Is it only a question of financing? What could we do? And so I met with a lot of brands in Accra, in Côte d'Ivoire, everywhere I was going to try to understand, because we're not talking the same language.
Okay.
And I wanted to make sure that my passion was not the only driver of that next professional move. Okay. Even though it was 70% of it. So
you would say 70%, majority.
Course, and this is why, the conversation will get very interesting, because things have changed.
Okay.
And so the thing is, because I was coming from a private equity industry, I was like, okay, let's adapt what I know, so private equity, to fashion. Yeah. As simple as it is. And create a private equity fund dedicated to luxury and to fashion. And so this is how we started in 2020.
20 you started, I remember.
So actually April 2021. So we're going to celebrate our 3 years in a couple of months.
Okay.
But when you kick off by saying that you are a private equity fund dedicated to the industry, people don't really get it, especially your targets.
Oh, so you mean the brands didn't get it?
Okay. So first of all, investors were asking us, okay, how are you going to make this profitable?
Yeah.
So how are you going to ensure that if we put €1 into your company, that you invest that €1 into a brand,
they will bring back.
In 5 years you can get us €5.
So that was the level of target you were getting. 5 return.
3 to 5.
3 to 5 is the return you need to do.
Yes.
Because that's one of the things that I think is mistaken. People think like investors are just giving money.
Absolutely. And they're not.
Yes.
And they're not. And be careful not to mess up with their money.
Yes.
Right? Because then you can be in a lot of troubles.
Yes, exactly.
And in all my careers, so before jumping into the creative industries, what was really critical in terms of reputation when you're a private equity fund is make sure you don't waste investors' money. That's the rule.
Yeah.
So when you're getting into creative industries and fashion, you know, you realize that you cannot give your investor back 3 to 5 times, especially in 5 years, because the first question is, how are you going to exit? When you enter into a brand, when you take a minority position, this is the case in the normal traditional world, you have to sell your participation in 5 years.
Yes, so someone needs to buy it.
Someone needs to buy it. So telling a brand, okay, we're going to support your growth in the long run, but we need to make sure that you have to deliver in 5 years, because in 5 years we need to exit to someone else. Yeah.
And just to be clear, to get 3 or 5 times what you invested, that means that the total exit in 5 years needs to be probably twice the 3 or 5 years, because you're a minority shareholder.
Absolutely.
So you end up in the situation like startups, where when you invest in a company, you need basically the company to do 10x the volume.
Totally. Of
sales in 5 years.
So we were basically structuring the such as we will invest in emerging brands, having low revenues, all the different kind of particularities that we know. So access to market, distribution, production, and so on and so forth. But making sure that in 5 years, independently of all those kind of bottlenecks, they could multiply their revenues by 10. So then you'll ask me, but how come you realized it after launching your
because
your activity?
The question that everybody wanted to ask is I think is naturally when listening to you, I was asking first, when you talk to the brands before starting the fund, the key thing from my experience I notice is when you talk to brands about getting finance, they all tell you, yes, I need it.
Yeah.
Yes, I can do that.
Yes.
But at the time, did they share with you their actual revenue?
No, because
that was a big problem, I think.
That was a big problem. And also, I think the hype.
Yes, the thing we talked about a lot.
You know, because I was under the impression that the only issue was to answer to the demand.
Yes.
So, for example, when Beyonce is wearing, an outfit, you will tend to think as an investor that everybody would like to wear that.
So you would assume that there is 100,000 orders pending.
Exactly. So it's just a question of flowing money in, and then it will flow back in terms of revenues. But no. And then the second thing is, I would say the image, the visibility, and the social network impact. Because when you see brands with a lot of followers, a lot of likes, you tend to think that, that hype is translating into revenues.
Into sales.
Wow. The reality is no. Right? So it took us 1 year to realize that behind the hype, there is the reality. First of all, followers and number of likes don't translate into revenues. Yeah. That's sad. Yeah. That's the reality.
That's the number one thing,
Second of all, brands still have financial needs. So how can we address them? And this is how we pivoted our activity from a fund to a financial institution, and developing mechanism, and we can talk about this at a later stage, that enable to fund those needs. But third of all, structure. Because brands, some of them don't know their revenues. They don't know their margin from one collection to one another. And this is what I really liked in our conversation, because when you told me, now, before booking a brand, I'm looking at 3 things: revenue growth, and margin. I mean, that's it.
Exactly.
There is nothing else you should look at if you really want to invest into the industry.
Exactly. And that's, for me, the key thing I always ask brand now, and I always tell people, if you want to talk to anyone about financing, this is the 3 things you need to be able to answer quickly. What is my revenue? What is my revenue growth? And what is my margin? And the thing is, it should be something you should be able to say publicly. If you're not able to say it publicly, you cannot get financing.
Yes.
It's not something you can hide. No. And I struggle. That's one thing that I really struggle myself to understand, why the brands don't like to talk about that. I don't. So the key thing that I also wanted to talking to you is another thing that people always And I think even myself, the one thing I really was surprised is, why didn't you talk about that with the people that were there before? The others, like, for example, I know you and I met, but we never talked about that. If we talked, I would have told you they don't have this level of revenue. So the question that people have always had, and I think that's one of the big things that people need to clarify with you right now, is why? Because you're right, there is, in the creative industry, there is a high level of hype, but I think there is also a high level of history. Like, there's a lot of people that have been in the industry for 10 years or more, back and forth, full-time or not. And the key thing is, a lot of them were always very, I think, honestly, I was butthurt when I realized that you didn't ask for our opinion or our experience.
Yeah.
So the key thing was, maybe that's one thing that I really wanted to know. What happened in your head when you were starting? Why didn't you? Because I think you talked to brands. You didn't talk to the people other than the brands in the business.
Yes. No, and you're absolutely right. And this is part of the lesson learned.
Ah, interesting.
Right?
Okay.
Really. Because to me, in the ecosystem, the key thing were the brands.
Yes, you only focus with them.
Because I think, and again, huge humility lesson learned.
Yes,
right?
learn,
I thought that maybe the right solution hadn't been identified so far, because it was not coming from the finance world. Like, you know, I thought that maybe it was only a question of funding. So if someone with like a track record in the funding industry, came and tried to structure something, then it would be a solution. Huge lesson learned, you know, and with some kind of looking backwards, I think that if all of us would have come together to structure based on your lesson learned, your experience, the others, today we would have maybe created something big and huge for the industry. And this is also, I think, why we might not get where we want to be.
Wow.
Because we don't work together. I think that also in the industry, if we could break the silos, if we could be all transparent, if we could all share those challenges, and
the history. But I think what you're really missing here is that we don't really talk about what failed.
Yes.
And that's really why also I wanted to praise you to be here and say what you're saying, because a lot of the things in our industry, and I think it's even harder than the other industry, because appearance matters so much. Nobody says I failed. Nobody says I learned this. Everybody is always like just managing.
Yes. I'm going to tell you very bluntly. We failed. And we are so grateful we did. No, really. No.
Because the problem is that the people the issue with that is people will think, okay, but the thing is, if you failed and now you're saying it, the consequences are the brands or the people that believed that you were going to save them. That's maybe the problem.
No, I mean, I'm going to start by a very simple example. Elon Musk.
Yes.
Steve Jobs. You know, all great entrepreneurs always says, fail.
Yes.
And fail fast.
Yes, exactly.
In whatever you're designing, fail and fail fast. Because you can then restart, rebuild, but with greater foundations than what you did before. So today, I think the end of the story is what? We failed, we pivoted, so we transform our business model from a fund to a financial institution. We still convinced the investor to be on board, and they did, because they were grateful we didn't make any kind of one wrong single investment decision, because that was also very important for them.
So okay. Can you explain that a bit? Because I think that's maybe also one of the things that people didn't understand. If you had invested in a company and then you could not get the money back, that would have killed the whole fund.
Definitely. Because it would have killed the investment thesis, the purpose, the why. And don't forget, in the industry, as I said, in the financial services industry, rules are different. By the time you're taking someone money to invest, you have a huge responsibility.
Fiduciary responsibility. For those that don't know this word, once you raise money, I hear it all the time when I'm talking about investors, fiduciary responsibility.
And you can go to jail for this, right? So if you don't stick to what you said to investors, they can push any kind of legal action against you. So what we had to do at some point. When we realized, and I'm really sad to say this, but when we realized that there were no investment opportunity that would match that investment strategy at the beginning.
Okay, that strategy of 10x revenue in 5 years.
We stopped. And we tell investors, let us rethink our business model and then get back to us. And they were like, okay, sure and cool. It's better this rather than lose our money. So what sometimes here into the industry and that I feel kind of sad, but that's the point. It's not even sad, it's incorporation, misunderstanding, is that brands think that we raised a lot of money, and sometimes I even hear philanthropic money.
What?
That investors give us money for free and that we're sitting onto that money and that we refuse to invest. That's not the case.
And you use the money because...
And you use the money to do what I don't know. But
exactly. That's the key point that they will assume, because they won't mind if you didn't use it, but they were like, she's using the money instead of giving it to us.
Yes, for us. But that's not the way it works, because we are a regulated entity. Right?
And just to get into the details for those that don't know, I'm not sure the money you raised, you receive all of the money right away.
On top of it.
Yeah, yes. Can you please explain that? Because some people I know, because that's also the things that maybe is hard in this industry, is that you came in almost as a savior. To be honest, I think the day you announced your fund, like I received messages from like 10 different people saying, oh, you need to contact her. Oh, you need to talk to her. Oh, this is... And I was like, wow, okay, so... good. And everybody was saying like, okay. So I imagine you got a lot of people coming to you then.
Request, yeah.
And that's, and to go back to this moment, I think the thing that was maybe missing also is a lot of things that people, and that's I think was my key point in the article I wrote was, so when you had this press article, people were very worried about the fact that you said that you invested in the company.
Okay.
And that's maybe where I need maybe for you to clarify what happened there, because I think that's what people hold against you still to this day.
Yes,
is that
I think it's a very important point. So first of all, I think it's not that black and white.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because I think the kind of resonance, interest, visibility that we had, even me, I was surprised.
Yeah, okay.
But because I think there was a strong need.
Yeah.
And what I get from that time is that the fact that the creative industry needed funding
was obvious.
Was definitely obvious. So there was a vacuum, a gap to be filled. And we came in. Now, when we started, we had, before announcing, identified some kind of brands.
Yes, that you wanted to invest in.
But we hadn't really completed our investment diligence, due diligence process.
Okay.
And also, I think what's very important point to specify into the industry is that when you invest, it's always subject to your investment committee decision.
Oh, okay. So what was announced? So basically, was what, letter of intent, kind of?
Letter of intent that we had signed. For sure.
Okay, so
and then
maybe you can explain that to people that don't know the financial process. So you had a letter of intent. So
So we had started the due diligence process. We had started discussion with the brands
to invest.
And
that's what you announced.
And that's what we announced. And then we went in through the due diligence process. And then came some kind of various issues which are normal into the financial investment process.
Yeah.
You can deal fails also,
yes.
Because you don't agree on valuation.
That's a big point.
And again, in that industry, you don't have benchmark. So a brand would say, my valuation is X. You as an investor will come and say, no, I think you're worth X.
You're worth Y. Generally, Y is way below X.
Exactly. But in the again, typical private equity world, you have what we call benchmark. So for example, in the distribution sector, brands with X% margin will be valued Y times their revenue. Yeah,
so it's okay, you do X% margin, that means you're supposed to have a valuation that is, for example, for those that don't know, for Africa, we know our benchmark is that we are to be at between 3 to 6 times revenue.
For instance,
if we manage to grow at least 100% per year.
You see?
That I know, but can you give... But I think it's important for people to know because nobody shares this benchmark.
No, and I think today we're really, I think, in a position where we know the numbers.
Okay.
Because we have been through a lot. We've seen a lot of things. And again, so far, because you interrupted me, so I couldn't conclude on the fact that we have financed 25 brands. In our pivoting and the shifting of
in the shifting of the thing, you did 25 brands.
What we do is financing collection. So we're a financial institution, and we design a financing product to support the working capital requirements of brands in their collection structuring.
Yes.
So typically, a brand needs to produce her next fall, winter, spring, summer collection, for instance, and has an identified budget. Financial needs and budget. So we will come in, look at the numbers.
Okay.
So past numbers. So we will look at the sales.
The past revenue.
Past revenues, sales generated by the former collections.
Yes.
The distribution network.
Yes.
The operational charges.
Okay.
And what we call the operating margin.
The margin.
So once we have earned revenues, pay our salaries, pay our expenses, what's the remaining portion of it that can be used to support the loan business or to pay back a loan? If at the end of the sum up, so plus, minus, minuses, the answer is 0 or the answer is negative, i.e. if the revenue, if the business is not profitable.
That's the first step.
We cannot
invest. Cannot invest or loan. That's the worst type.
Exactly.
But sometimes what happens,
the business is profitable. Then we can look at what the brand can support in terms of amount comparing to the budget, because that's also one of the things is some brands are asking like a kind of financial support or investment that is far bigger that they can support. So what we always say is it's not a question that we don't want to give you that money. It's that if we do it, we're going to kill your business because your revenue cannot support
this type of investment
mechanism. Exactly. So at the end of the day, we are not International Red Cross of fashion. That's what I told you last time.
Yeah.
We are a business with investor, a financial institution that has a fiduciary duty and that has to come back with a return on investment for its stakeholders and a return on impact for the brand. So this is where we meet.
That's very important. I understand that. And so maybe just to go back to the key thing is, for me, is interesting because there's two lessons there. First, you're right on the thing that a lot of the brands don't realize that revenue is key, but margin are just as important. Because the key thing is, I have the same problem. A lot of brands don't realize that, for example, I always tell brands, tell me if you think it's wrong. We tell them, you cannot hope for a loan that is higher than 30% of your revenue.
Definitely.
It's impossible.
Of course. And it's even dangerous.
It's dangerous, but a lot of them don't even know this rule.
It's dangerous.
It's a very strong rule. And it's almost like a person, like a bank won't loan you 30% more than your salary.
Yes, but also an investor, whether it's in equity or debt, that's the same rule. You know, you and I, for example, we raise money.
Yes.
If we go and see our investors from IFC, from Proparco and everything, we would like you to invest in our businesses. Yeah. But please understand that you will not get that money back.
Right away.
How do you think they will? It's not even right away.
Yeah, never. If you tell them you might not get your money back, they will just say, okay, good luck. They won't give it to you.
Exactly. So you see the point. I think what is really critical for everybody who's listening to us today to understand is that it's not that we're mean. It's not that we're dangerous. It's not that we don't want to do it. It's that collectively, we would like to give credibility to the African creative industry and to the hype that we see all today. So if we contain ourselves from being creative and from encouraging the creativity, we might not structure a profitable and sustainable industry and fashion industry out of it.
Yeah, and that's very important because what you just said is true not only for fashion, it's true for beauty, it's true for even creative industry. For me, you have also all the things that are movies, series. Everyone that is listening to us talking about financing should think about that. If you don't know your revenue, your margin, and your growth, you're in big trouble to hope for financing. And even if you know there are benchmarks, like you said, there are rules, you cannot hope to get more financing than a third of your yearly revenue, for example. Another thing that I will ask for you, for example, knowing your experiences, a lot of them don't realize what is expected to be a good margin. What would you say is a good margin for a brand?
I would say a good margin for that business, for that industry.
Yes.
Knowing all the challenges, production, price point, exporting, importing raw materials, and depreciating currencies in some country, being exposed to your money that losing its value when you have...
The currency is falling down in Naira, for example.
In Naira, for example, instead when you're Ghana, for instance, whereas you have expense in dollar because some of your suppliers are in dollars and they don't care about your money.
Exactly. So your revenue is going down, but your costs are staying the same or even increasing.
Exactly. You see, so all those things are complicated, and I'll come back to it. But good margins start at, I think, 15%.
15 minimum?
15 minimum.
But that's net margin?
Yes.
So including...
No, the EBITDA margin.
EBITDA margin. So that includes salaries, that includes...
production.
That includes...
distribution,
everything.
Everything.
Now, when everything is paid, you should have 15% of what you made as revenue at least.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that's...
Exactly. That's a good starting point.
Yeah, but that's not enough, I imagine.
And that's not enough.
Because 15% you cannot take a loan.
You could. We start at 15%.
Because, okay.
Yes, because
good.
we have longer maturities.
Okay.
And that we also have grace period. Because we had it to adapt. And that's also
that's part of your new product. Exactly.
Yes, because we realized that banking and financing still needed to adapt to the creative industries.
Yeah.
So this is our USP, unique selling proposal.
Yeah.
Knowing how banks work, knowing how banks are looking at investment opportunities, and knowing how brands are working. Yeah. So in the middle, we studied the production cycle of, I would say, almost 100 brands to see what would be the particularity. Because also, we don't have seasons here, but we have Easter, we have Ramadan.
Yes.
We have Valentine's.
Exactly. We have events time. Yeah.
Events time.
Yeah.
So the production
should match that.
Exactly. And revenue cycle of those brands, of the brands we are working with on the continent, are driven by those kind of events. So when you get into a discussion with a brand to finance the brand, you need to understand that there will be months where there will be no revenues. That's part of the story because we have those event cycle.
Interesting.
And during Ramadan here, for example, in Côte d'Ivoire, everybody knows that no one is buying.
Yes.
And this year, for instance, Ramadan and the carême, the fasting period, will be at the same time, or will just
be around each other.
Around each other. So basically, potentially,
you will be zero sell
in 2 months. For 2 months. So then catch up time. So a typical normal investor won't feel comfortable with that. But because we have started the cycle and the pickups and the low and downs, we were able to convince our investors and banking partners to go through it with us, because we will ensure that behind not only we'll do the recovery, but we're also working on the structure, working with accountant, for example, on the numbers, also working on the development strategy of the brands, shootings, and so on and so forth. So, for instance, just to finish on this, on our portfolio of 25 brands today, we have a 0 default rate.
Nice.
After 2 years. I would say 18 months, which is really important because now you have an investment thesis.
Exactly.
Now you can go and see investors and say, this is actually working. We needed to fail to succeed. We have now the right operating model for that industry, and we are duplicating in different kind of geographies, different kind of model and countries.
Yeah.
One key thing also all people who are listening to us need to have in mind. As we said, we are evolving in economies with a lot of hiccups. So depreciation. So what we did in the Francophone zone, which has a stable currency, obviously cannot be extended.
It's the only one.
In the same way in those countries. So this is also where we come into play with our expertise to really understand those markets, adapt, test a product, see if it works, and if it works, deploy
to other places. That's very interesting. So when I listened to what you said, a big thing came to mind is like from what you described and all the issues in selling in African countries, from the currencies to the economics to the variation of consumption. Like I imagine there is a very important, I might say, bonus to selling mostly exporting. And that's the thing that also, like, just like we said, a lot of the brands cannot get financing because their revenue is not high enough. I think it's important for us to tell them also at some point you need to export, especially if you are in a country where the currency is failing.
Yes.
Because that means that you are in the pincer of death, like I call it. So your revenue is going down and your costs are going up.
Yes.
Definitely. Because you're going to buy stuff from outside. You cannot get everything only at your price.
Yes.
And that's the key thing that also I understand from what you're saying is that to people listening to us, if you are doing any type of creative brand, it's okay if you are lucky to be in a country like West Africa where the currency is fixed. But even there, you should probably look to export as much as you can.
Yes. What we tend to see over those 3 years of activity is a very interesting comparison between Francophone and Anglophone.
Yes, tell me.
So Francophone countries, for example, and I always hated that difference, but this is the truth. Yeah. The truth. Francophone, so Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, Togo, actually have a captive demand. So they have their market. Their market is local.
Okay.
They have distribution network with most of them. So most of the brands are really performing, have their clientele.
Yes, have already people inside the zone.
The zone. So their, I would say, persona are African, West African women living here, wanting to have in their closet a mix, like, for example, this from Olivia Perez, and things that are mothered, and so on and so forth. But they haven't really needed to
go outside. They never had to. Okay.
They never had to because the network is here. So
distribution network.
Distribution network is here. So them funding push, and it's actually accelerating their growth because they don't stable. The country is stable. The consumer base is here, and with a bit of push onto social network, they can get more. But actually exporting for them,
it's hard.
It's an issue because they don't have the infrastructure. They're not used to it. So it means that they will start to work with DHL and with platforms like yourself. And I think it's the next step for them. But they need to be supported and trained
to go there, to think like that. Because even their customers are not the same, so the product might need to change.
And they still need to be known internationally. I think the best way for a brand to grow is to go beyond its border. But still here, I mean, there is a kind of comfort zone where they
stay.
So when you look at social network, for example, you also see that difference. Our brands
have less social media following than the Anglophone brands.
Absolutely.
By far.
Absolutely. When you shift into
Anglophone.
The Anglophone zone, these are the queens and kings, of internationalization, social network, and everything. Why? Because first of all, diaspora. So their consumer base is also abroad. And the language, they speak English.
So they speak the same language as
the US, the UK, and everything. They were the first one to be very, very innovative in terms of digital fashion show and everything. So their image themselves got exported before the product. Especially during COVID. So this is why you see a lot of brands into Anglophone Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, having a strong consumer base at the international level, D2C, direct to consumer. Which is also really strong because when you go onto wholesale, then it's a different kind of
because you don't have the margin.
In terms of margin and everything. So it's very, very interesting, and this is why I think having a Pan-African approach from where we stand, you and I, is very important because we can exchange lessons learned.
And do a bit of both.
Break the silos, do a bit of both, but also foster collaboration in terms of distribution for those in terms of different kind of market apps.
Yeah, that's why, for example, I always tell Anglophone brands, they should probably look at coming to Ivory Coast quick.
Yes.
They should, if they can. A lot of them now that the Naira has fallen, and even the CDs, I even talked with Aisha Christie, she's also thinking about coming, etc. So that makes sense. But for me, the other thing that maybe we didn't touch upon is also for brands that are listening to us and that are like, okay, you're saying all of this, like it's difficult. Okay, because I understand that when you listen to us, it might look like what's the point?
And you're not convinced and you not trust. No, that's not the thing.
Exactly. No, I really want to highlight the fact that, like you said, you already financed 25 brands already with these loans.
And we expect to do more this year.
Exactly. You want to do more and you have zero default.
Exactly.
On our end, we also financed some people on our own balance sheet, and we already did some tests. We didn't have zero default. And that's the big thing that I also want to highlight is we were larger in how much people we gave to, but we came to the same conclusion as you. Now, that's why we still provide financing, and we have example of people we finance that will be like La Falaise, Shikudo, other brands that will talk in this podcast. But we realize that we need to tell people, okay, you can only hope for that if you do a minimum number of revenue. So for you, for example, what would be the minimum number of revenue that you would look at if you say someone wants to get like financed?
Oh, we start low here in Côte d'Ivoire, for example, and with the scheme that we've built, we've started with brand earning something below 10k euros.
10k euros per year?
Yeah.
Okay, that's nice.
Yeah, so that's why we're saying that it works. It's just a question of computing the numbers and having a good distribution and revenue generation.
But they need to have great margin then.
Yes, but having said that, the lower the revenues, the higher the risk, for sure. And we can go into that level of revenues and risk because we have the counter guarantee from IFC, National Financial Corporation. So it's not a reason to do like
give to anyone
transaction. But since our mission is also to have an impact, we need to be able to provide revenues to small brands. So that's why we start with brands having around 10k euros revenues
per year
in CFA franc.
In CFA franc, and the key thing is from this, but you're not going to give them more than 3,000 euros, I imagine, then for that.
Yeah, not even. Yeah.
Not even.
Yeah.
So 2,000.
Yeah, because the limit is
exactly no.
Whatever
they can sustain. Sustain, and that's so. Let's do the reverse work. A lot of the brands I know, we looked at the numbers, and I want to give you this exercise because it's interesting for people to realize that this is. I really wanted you also to share your point of view now that you have done all of this work around. Is that we have brands, in average, brands are looking for 10,000 euros. Okay, we have seen 10,000 to 50,000 being the request, and I tend to tell them the problem is when you want 10,000, that means that you must be doing at least 40,000.
At least.
In revenue.
At least.
And that is if you make 20% margin.
Definitely. Yes.
If you do less,
I would say that if you want 10,000, so it depends which duration, but let's say 1 year.
1 year.
1 year, 18 months. I would say to be on the safe side, you need to generate 50
that's true.
euros.
Or revenue.
Because you need to be able to absorb any kind of unforeseen events at
your
activity.
Exactly. Yes, true. That happens a lot. So, for example, a production like an order which didn't came or which was badly well and that you have to redo. Yeah.
If you're really, really squeezed out in terms of margin and in terms of how much you still have to pay back your loan, then, you can face some challenging situation.
Yeah.
And liquidity can be a very, very, very pressuring.
No, but that's how brands die. Like I like to say, liquidity is the oxygen of the company. If you don't have any entrepreneur, if you don't have cash, and if you don't know your cash flow enough, like I said to people, it's almost like what people do sometimes when they don't know their numbers. Is for me like diving without having, diving with oxygen and don't have the level of oxygen you have in the bar.
Yes, not knowing.
Not knowing. You're just going diving. You don't know how much oxygen you have, so you don't know how much cash you have to sustain your exercise.
Yes, and also I think the key, and it's not only in the creative industry.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
The key to succeed is to have a very, very cautious and stringent approach to how you manage cash and your expenses. And we tend to see also the brands that succeed are brands that are really, really, really assessing their option into their budget. They know that the budget is limited.
And they're very structured.
Yes, even if you have money, that's not the point. It's not open bar. It's limited. You need to choose your priorities. And
that maybe means that you cannot be... It's very hard to do that when you are the only creative director, operation director, financial director. If you are all your alone, it's harder.
That's why, I mean, every time we engage with a brand, so at the beginning of what we call the financial assessment. So when we get all the numbers, the data, and it's a very cumbersome work because some of the brands don't have financial statements.
Yeah.
So we're working with banking reports and everything. So sometimes the brand doesn't even know the financial situation.
Oh, you need to make it for them.
So we're doing this saying, these are your revenues. This is the growth. These are your
cost.
Expenses. And this is what remain. So be careful, So, and sometimes it's a very useful exercise.
But they need to pay you for that normally. It's.
But you attacked me for this, right?
Exactly.
You told me
that's the key thing. So basically, what you're telling me is that, for example, because one of the things that I attacked you for was the
commission.
The appraisal fee is to do this work.
Yes, totally.
But they should have done this work before.
No, because they can't. As you said, they don't have any kind of accountant. They don't.
So basically what you're telling me is that even on your brands you had to do this work for them, for some of them?
We're doing this all the time. All the time. And sometimes, it takes a lot of time too because brands have to look for the data, for the numbers. And it would be a mistake to think that everything is very well organized. And that's not the case, but that's also part of the value we bring.
Yeah, exactly.
Because whether we said yes or no. And by the way, the appraisal fee is only due if we said yes.
That I didn't know.
If we say no, the brand can still have a very clear picture of
what happened
or situation.
Because you give them the financial assessment that they don't have.
Yeah, we say why. We say why. We say why. We say no.
That's a good point. Okay, so that's one of the things that I didn't know, but that's okay. That is interesting because that brings back to the things you learned, because that's another thing that. So maybe another thing that people also really wanted for you to maybe explain is, why didn't you tell this to people when it happened? Because I first of all,
because
I feel like you had the information, you could have tell people, and like that will help so many people to realize what you're doing.
Do you think really that having the role of someone who's saying what no one wants to hear is really helping at the point where the focus is not there? Because I think at some point there was such a misunderstanding between our mission and the way the market, the brands were understanding it. As you said, savior, like we were seen as like, we're going to flow free money and without any condition, without nothing. And what I didn't say is also we use big means to do what we did at the beginning. We worked with, for example, EY to do a financial assessment of all the brands.
You paid EY for that? That's a lot of money.
It cost us a lot of money, and to find out that
they were not ready.
No. So at the time.
So do you think that's another thing that we need to say today? Can we say there is an issue and we don't have enough brands that do enough revenue?
I think that I will see it the other way around.
Okay, tell me.
I would see it, and that the key message I would like to leave. I firmly and even more believe in the potential of the African fashion industry to transform into an economic powerhouse. Because in the 25 brands that we have financed so far, all of them are top performing.
Good.
All of them have like 20 to 30% revenue growth. Good. 20, 25, 30% margin. We can measure the impact of our financing onto them in terms of job creation, revenue growth, etc., etc. Track record speaks for itself. So based on the fact that we have done this, I'm convinced that this is only the beginning and the tip of the iceberg, provided everybody accepts the rule. The key one, there is no free money.
Yeah.
By the time I give you X, you have to pay me back X plus. That's the thing. Unless I'm a philanthropic venture,
which is not the same thing. No, this is not us.
And that's not us.
But that's very interesting.
And I think just the key, to insist on this, the African fashion industry doesn't need charity.
Yeah.
And the way we portrayed it at the beginning, the reason why I was attacked is because everybody thought at some point it was charity, it was free money, it was this and that. Some brands were asking for money without any kind of condition. And when we were discussing the condition. No, we don't. No, no. It's a business. Let's all be serious.
Yeah, and I think that's the same thing about valuation, is that people don't talk about ego. The problem is that the same issue is that like people want the money, but they don't realize that the money they want will put them in a situation where they are facing their own fear of losing control.
Yes.
Because that's a reality of a lot of brands that I see, is that yes, it's very hard to grow a business to the level they did. So I understand that they want to protect what they built, and like it's almost their child. It is their child. But the key thing is, if they want it to grow further, they need to give some kind of control.
Yes, and you see, it's not.
And the thing we talked about valuation earlier, and that's maybe why also it's very hard to reconcile. I think the key thing we can say is that we are here, both you and me, and people always contact me, and I say I'm open to do that. That's why we have the ANKA Growth Club, to have people come, and you are going to do more things now in financing of a country where we're going to help you. And get more people to get financing. So people can come to us if they want to get finance, and we can teach them, but we cannot do the work for them. That's the key thing for me. Like what you're saying is like, we need to tell them that. And the last thing I really want to say also to conclude in a, I think, much more optimistic way is that we didn't talk about the fact that you said this is something that doesn't happen only in Africa.
Exactly. No.
It's not an African problem, not getting finance in creative industry.
No, not at all.
So that's another thing that I found very interesting. You told me that you even talked to people doing it in France, for example. And so apparently you mentioned to me about a project, so maybe you can give back some context for the others. What happened to the project that was done by the French state when they tried to...
So BPI, the Banque Publique d'Investissement,
in France,
launched in France a couple of years ago, 10 years ago, a fund called Mode et Finance. And
what's his name?
Mode et Finance.
Mode et Finance, so fashion and finance.
Exactly. So
fashion and finance.
Private equity fund dedicated to the fashion industry and to invest in brand. So for multiple reasons, the first pilot didn't really work the way they expected it to work. For the same reason, because lack of structure, they need to be operational, close to the designer, and also valuation issues. But the key thing is, in France there is an ecosystem which is like far more structured than what we have. So in France we have organizations like Le Défi, who is giving grants to brands so that they can have money and everything. These are states agency or government body having money like the way they are. But when you look at the continent, we only do this from the private sector. So we can't afford to subsidize something that is not subsidized in way of financing by ourselves. So I think that it's not an African issue. Funding, investing in brand is really complicated.
It's difficult.
Anyway. And when you look at the luxury industry, even at a bigger scale, the big main luxury houses, how many years do they have? Do you think it's 5, 10? Not even 50. Look at Chanel, Dior, Louis Vuitton. How many? We were talking about centuries.
Yes.
Right?
It takes a lot of time.
It takes a lot of time. So we will not change things overnight. We have to be very humble.
And very patient.
Very humble and very patient. Time will tell. But in this, we all need to look into the same direction. So working on structure, working on building businesses, maybe take the time to build the foundation, maybe as a brand, accept that you cannot have like a shop, you know, overnight if your number of pieces produced per year are under a certain level. Because are you going to find your operational charges?
Sure.
Things take time. And also, I think we can play the role of that kind of advisor, because at the end of the day, I think our whys, our mission and ambition
are the same.
Still, the same, to structure an industry and to contribute, have a significant impact on its sustainable development. I think I might not see it.
But we probably might not see it, but we need to launch the structure and infrastructure for...
Our children will benefit from it.
That's very...
It's very important. And I would maybe also say, to conclude, because I can compare with other industries, having invested in finance, the financial industry, consumer industry, distribution, so everything that's related to fashion before, basically it's also the same.
Oh, it's the same there also?
But you know how difficult it is to invest in SMEs, for instance.
Yeah, extremely hard.
So when you lack structure, whether you are in the fashion industry, whether you are in the distribution, health, tech, when you are an SME, you are fragile. So structures need to be put in place to support the sustainable growth.
Yeah.
And financial means will come. And I think us too, we also have to look back at our investors and say, listen, guys,
this is going to be
seeing that what we're doing is really, really, really complicated. So please adapt also your investment framework to what we're trying to achieve.
Exactly.
Because if we have more leeway to invest into that industry,
we can make it. But that's true because
do more.
Because the key thing that I always say to people is, the other day my investors came to me and said, okay, you're right, we need to invest in bigger brands. And they asked me, can you name one brand, African made, with structure, so not a solo founder, that is doing more than $1 million a year? And I was like, $1 million a year of revenue. So anyone listening, if you know a brand doing that, tell me, we have money for them, but but we don't. And that's the key thing. And I'm really trying to be dead serious, but people don't realize that this is the thing is, I really want to leave the message to people that there is money to be invested. The problem is that the time frame in which it's invested require a certain size, a certain speed that we don't have. So we can do the work on our side to push to have more time, but people need to understand that if you're aiming for financing at any point of your business travel, this is the bar.
No, absolutely.
And I think it's very hard because, they ask me, I don't know.
Yes.
Actually, it was a question from Marie that asked me that also. And I was like, because Marie is also, Marie Laura, for those that don't know her also, is one of the person that really helped us discuss this. We don't know. And the key thing is, that's also the reason we made this podcast. Is that I felt like we could not get to the detail of all of this, either on just a blog. And I really want people to be able to access it for free. So, some people ask us, why don't, for example, we did our white paper report with all our data, all our analysis, and we gave it for free. You go on anka.africa/white paper, it's for free.
Yes.
English and French. Because we realize that we need to give that to people. And that's also why we take the effort of doing this podcast with you and with all the other people we're going to do. So you're the first. By the way, thank you for that. And thank you for coming. I think it's important for people to realize that the more content, the more honestly we share these things, just like you came today to share that you fail, you learn, now you're succeeding in a very different work and sharing what you learned. I think it's essential that we all try to do that. We'll try to do it also. So anyone that want to come to the podcast and share and share there. And I think it's important to also realize that the entrepreneurial journey in itself can be valuable.
Yes, definitely.
Even if people fail, it's okay. And if there are brands that fail or people that stop doing it, that want to share why they failed, I also welcome them to come.
Yes, but I mean, Ulay, that's not even failing.
Yes, exactly. That's learning.
That's learning.
Yes, you're right.
There is no failure in this.
Yeah.
There is no failure in this because we're all pioneers.
Yes, we're all trying things in a desert.
Exactly in the desert. We're people are amazed about the African creativity, the African fashion. I was at New School last week. I was telling you the huge event about the African fashion booming. It's an opportunity. So in this journey, there is no failure. As much experience as we can demonstrate to show what we're trying to build. Why is it important? How we can make it different? How we can make it count is important. And the simple fact that I'm sitting in front with you today, being capable of explaining what I have to say after what happened between us is actually a success.
It's a success
and
for
that
us.
failure brought me to that success in front of you. So I'm thankful for this, but that's not the point. I would like to ask you, now that you've understood my journey so far, what's your takeaway? And what's your wish list for a fashion industry?
Yeah, that's very interesting. For me, the main takeaway I realized from what we discussed is that, yes, we need to find first occasions for people to say what didn't work. Because the thing is, I feel like from what we discussed that what you learned trying over the first year, you could not really share it without putting the brands in danger. That's the key thing that, and myself probably didn't realize because from what I was seeing, I didn't understand why. Because the problem is that you had all the lights on you and in return, we had nothing to show. And the thing is, I realize now that a big part that we need to really organize is for even those that had a certain image of you. Because I know that, for example, people were very surprised that you always put a picture of yourself. So, but I think it gets to the level what I realized. I always said, for me, it wasn't never a personal thing, but I realized that for some people, it can get personal because of the interaction you had.
Yeah.
And that's the key thing that I think is we need to find ways to just talk to each other.
Yes, definitely.
Just that's my key thing, is just to find ways. So, like I said to everyone, if I invited you, is to also show people that we can talk to you.
Yes.
Like it's also like, it's not like, because I didn't want this to end up like you said, we are in the same mission. And I really want to extend it to anyone, even if you're not doing fashion, you're doing, because we talk about fashion, but there is beauty, there is all of these other aspects of our creativity. Even the other day I was talking, for example, people will ask you, why don't you finance movies? Because we had Philippe Taco the other day on the Entrepreneur Set of Africa podcast we do. And he had the first Ivorian movie nominated for the Oscar.
Okay.
And he had trouble getting finance. And I was like, yes, I understand. But he is very structured. So I was like, ultimately, we will finance much more different type of creative industry. Mm-hmm. The fashion one is the one that has the lights on for the moment. But yeah, my takeaway is that we need to talk more. People need also to share more.
Yes.
I honestly, I'm very proud, for example, that the ANKA Growth Club we're doing with the USAID to get brands, to go to the US, to do pop-ups. We still have people that can apply even to this day. So we'll put the link. People can apply.
Yeah.
But the key thing we ask for applying is, what is your revenue? And we didn't get even to what is your profit. But if you want to get to financing, you need to be able to share, like we said, your revenue, your margins, and your growth. Totally. Because that's, for me, it's the key thing.
That's the key.
That's the key thing. And to have the benchmarks, you can ask us. But the key thing is, for me, you need to be a bit direct and just say, okay, this is my revenue. This is my personal commitment. Any brand that comes to me and say, this is my revenue, this is my margin, this is my growth, I will tell you whether or not you can finance. And I'm pretty sure if you have the opportunity to finance them, you will.
Definitely, because that's the objective.
Yes.
Really, we're looking for. Sometimes with my teams, we're like, okay, how many brands do we have on our plate today?
On our deal flow to get more brands.
Yes, and like we're struggling to have. So I think it's time. Again, it's a long journey. We have to be patient, and things are far much more in a better place than they were 2 or 3 years ago.
Exactly.
I think when you mention something about my image, blah, 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 I agree. I think this is very important.
Yes, please, tell me. What would you say?
We are in an industry where there are a lot of ego and image count. And I think at the beginning, because I was coming from an industry where I was known, like the financial services, that move, even from the financial services industry, was not known. So I think there was another specificity of my image, but I think the bottom line is part of the lesson I learned again is humility.
Yes.
That thing, I have no ego. Today I'm building an institution. Yeah. An institution that has to survive me.
Yes.
So part of the success will be in 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
If my face is not only necessary, but the key component of it. And that's what I'm telling my investors every single day. I'm telling them, we are building an institution. I would like the brand to be as strong as some of the brand you hear in the world. Today, Apple is still alive, and Steve Jobs is dead.
Exactly.
At some point, he was not even running the company, right? Yeah. So I think we also need to make sure that to know what we're doing those things. Having left one of the most comfortable seats I had, professionally speaking, running the subsidiary of a private equity fund here in Côte d'Ivoire, jumping to do this. With no revenues whatsoever, right? Yes. Because I'm investing all that I have into Birimi.
People will say you have a carry, No, you
don't get me into this.
You don't have a carry? No, come on.
But I mean, the carry interest works differently. So it's really long time, and it's not coming until the fund is divesting and everything. It's not this. So I've like.
So it's not It's not something that, because I really want to finalize to end the idea that you're doing this just to. Like, you are benefiting from it, not the brands.
No, I think that this is something that I'm hearing all the time.
Yeah, but maybe you need to tell them like how much you earn. Because I think that people need to understand a bit more, like, who you are.
Yeah, I mean, when they're saying I'm benefiting, I'm using their name, I'm, blah, blah, blah. Actually, I think It's not the point, because it's not that I needed this to exist professionally. Actually, I'm taking a risk because I'm coming from an industry where I was known into the financial services industry, where I can replace myself into some banks and everything. And some people are asking themselves, what is she doing? Right?
What is she doing still?
Going into the creative industry. Those who understand are, okay, she's building a legacy. She wants to prove that there is something to be done around creativity. The brands, I think what they need to know is that I'm not earning money out of Verimian. I'm actually losing money every single day.
Oh, interesting.
Of course, because I'm investing my own money into this to maintain the system on top of investors, because investors will only follow you if you have what they call skinning the game.
Oh, so you invested yourself also?
Of course, because to raise fund, investors always ask you to invest more. So I invested 2 times more than my investors. So I'm at risk. So this is why sometimes I was like, not only we need to stop what we're doing to make sure this is right. Second of all, I need to block the noise because there was so much at stake, and I could actually stop everything and say, you know what, if what I'm bringing is not useful, if you think that I don't have the right solution, if you think that I'm using yourself to doing something, I can just stop everything and go back to my typical, traditional career into private equity or banking. But I'm not doing this because, again, legacy. Because when you leave that word, when this is over, you need to make sure you left something. And because I am a firm believer into the potential of our creative industries, I would like to structure a business out of it. So within the noise, some would say she's using us. Some said a lot at the beginning, she's using us. Today, I'm really grateful to the people saying more and more, she has helped us. And, I've released Iconic Africa, one of the book I mentioned to you.
Yes, the book,
And during the Dedicas, there was a pool, an association of designers who came to me saying, thank you.
Oh, you should have filmed this. That's good content, because people don't often see people say that you help them. That's a good point.
Yeah, but so now we're releasing more and more, shots and videos on what we did with the financing, what did the brands did, and so on and so forth. This is reality.
Okay,
so I don't want to say that the one who are bashing are the one who couldn't be financed. But when you look at the numbers, sometimes this is the case. And again, why I didn't want to talk and why I was reluctant to come, because I told you, Moulay, I don't want to put brands in a very difficult situation because of the numbers that we have. And that's not my nature. Sometimes I'm attacked, but I don't attack. I don't have time for this. I let people talk. And in the end, time will tell.
That's interesting for me, because the other thing just that I wanted to clarify also is that for the cases where, because from what I understand also, there is just a lot of the things you learned, people didn't, how can people go back to the mission? Because I'm trying to get us back to the key thing is, it should not be about, how bad is Laureen or how good is Laureen. It's not the point.
No, that's not the point.
I really want to...
That's not the issue.
Yeah, and that's why I really did this podcast, is for people to focus on the industry, because you managed to raise funds, and that's the key thing is we never had people try to do what you tried. And you said that in other places it failed. So what else did you learn from other places like that we can apply, other than people being structured, knowing their benchmarks?
I think the key that I have learned is agility. Yeah. When something doesn't work,
you need to change it. You need to
change it immediately. And first of all, learn why and change. So don't do things big at the beginning.
Yeah, small first.
Test and learn. This is called design thinking. Test and learn. Test and learn. Adjust. Test and learn. Adjust. So this is why. And you'd ask me, why didn't I go out to tell my story? Because I don't have time, right? Okay. We're too busy testing, learning, adjusting, testing, learning, adjusting. So I prefer, at some point, you need to do. And there are enough talking into that industry. So at some point, you need to act, and you need to act fast, because you don't have that time. Okay. So this is why I think that we should all be grateful to have the opportunity in that continent to do things that have not been done elsewhere. Even yourself, like ANKA is something that you change. You started with Africa, and then you change. And the discussion we had in Marrakesh was that thing, is that you completely adjusted and you pivoted. And
we had to follow the industry and the business where it was going, not what we wanted. We just had to do what was needed.
Exactly. And in every fashion hubs, you have those two kind of, I would say, pillars: creativity and business. The issue is you mix both. And I think our challenge is to make sure that both are aligned, intertwined, and not at odds.
That's for sure, and that's why we created actually in ANKA, because you're right to mention that people don't realize that what we create now is really, of course, you have ANKA, the marketplace that is known as Africrea, but we focused on doing the ANKA Pay. There's a solution like PayPal to get paid from everywhere. The ANKA shipping also, because we realized that we needed to provide a solution not only for people that wanted to have their product discovered outside. We needed to have a solution for those also that were already selling. And because we noticed the reality that you see in our white paper report, the majority of the brands did not do enough revenue to sustain the whole company.
Yes.
And not enough growth, because a lot of them start, leave, come, not enough growth to sustain the whole business. But we also had to create a subscription level, because people talk a lot. For example, we got a lot of critics for the subscription that we had. But it was because we needed people to be consistently engaging. Too many people came and did one collection and just didn't come back for months.
Yes.
And we need people to come every month, like you said, test, learn, and produce. So that's kind of the things, and that's why I really insist for anyone that really wants to learn more about the industry. Maybe there are also finances, maybe there are just institutions. I think governments can learn from this discussion also. And go read. There is the UNESCO report highlighting a lot of the struggles.
Definitely.
I really like this report because it showed
it's an amazing
a lot.
Report.
Yeah, on all of the issues that the brands have, from the words also of some of the big brands already.
Yes.
And also what we shared in our paper report that really give a lot of information. So I think now information is there.
Yes.
Like, people cannot really complain that they don't have information. You just need to
to
go for it. But yes, now we need to do more work. So like I said, any brands that want to get finance can contact us, obviously.
Yeah.
We will do the work of highlighting, but please come with your numbers. No, because that's the problem. Like, I realized that I swear that's the only annoying part that I had is, like you said, someone had to do the bad guy work. Like, you didn't want to do it, I understand.
But we had to do it.
Exactly. You had to do it eventually because you had to do it, but just in the background. So you took the hit publicly for doing it in the background. Yeah. I do it now because in the end, otherwise, because the problem is that because we are the one that raised the most funding in the industry now as a platform, everybody is looking at us like, why don't you share?
That's the same. You see?
Yes.
And why don't you share? Because you have a fiduciary duty.
Exactly, because I have a fiduciary duty. Exactly. That's the point. And the fiduciary duty that I have now, I try to add it in this podcast. And that's why I really recommend people listen to the other episodes. So we're going to have big brands, like, of course, Nana Watch is going to come, the ones that didn't need any financing. Brands like La Falaise John that we helped getting financed. Brands in Nigeria like Shikuro that managed to export and sell in big brand store. Brands like Deji and Cola that actually just from D2C is now doing hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we try to give all of the kind of brands. So if there is people also that want to get financed, they can contact us.
You can contact.
And if they want, or even better, if you are brands that you think are at the level they should be financed, send us our ways.
Definitely. Yes, I mean,
that's the key point for me.
That's the thing we're looking for.
Exactly, we're all looking for that. And even if people are not going to work with us because maybe they don't like me also, I'm not also the one that everybody likes, so just to be honest, or they don't like you, they can even send us a message and say, okay, this brand, I'm good, I have these numbers, can I work with someone else to get financed? I don't mind. I will give them the access to anyone because, to be very clear, this is, like you said, a pioneering work. Anyone winning is a win. Anyone is a win for everyone.
Very important. Sometimes one day an investor came to us and told us, you know what, Laureen? Everybody is looking at you for two reasons.
Yeah.
Because if you succeed in the long run, it means that they are room for more and more actors like yourself, and then there is a strong base and compelling story as an investment thesis for the African creative industries. But if you fail, then it's also lesson learned for us.
That's the end of it. No one is going to come.
That's what. So this is also what we have a pressure. Because someone coming from the financial and investment world, venturing into the creative industry with that structured approach. Discussing with investors, maybe not having that strong with them, but investors, that's what they're looking at.
Exactly.
So it's important that all of us also can show that there is no failure option.
And that's actually to go back to the article I wrote initially about you. That was my key point, is that if you, because you have all the credibility needed, you have the experience needed, if we let you fail, and that's why I also tell people, no matter how they feel about you, they need to help you, because the reality is that if you fail, we all fail. And we are not going to see any money anytime soon. So I'm just like giving the words to everyone. Like, it's clear, no matter how you feel about us as person, because some extent, just to be clear, initially people felt the same about ANKA in Africa. It's only now that because we raise money, people actually talk to us. But before, none of these brands or people wanted to talk to us, because for them we were too cliche, too wax, too much Ankara, too wing. Of course, like a lot of I think that's the key thing. That's also reason, and I also must recognize that's the reason why when you came, I didn't make a huge effort to talk to you. I just sent one email and you didn't respond. I was like, okay, because I felt like I'm used to people that don't want to talk to us because we're not luxury, because we are not sexy.
That's not true at all.
Exactly, but that's how
I'm here today. So
exactly, but
and then
exactly,
told you. No,
exactly,
I mean,
and that's the key thing. But I just want to highlight that everybody has his own personal way of seeing industry from their experience. From my experience, I always felt like the guy that was doing the dirty work. Working with the small brands, doing a lot of work, but nobody cares about it. Thankfully, like you said, Tam told us and we managed to raise a bit of funding, so that maybe made us a bit more visible. But it's only the beginning.
Yes, that's the most important.
That's the most important thing. I really want to highlight the fact that, like you said, humility is really important. And that's why I said, okay, no matter what, it's really important for us to do this kind of effort. So once again, let's start a discussion. Exactly. Let's start. Let's keep working. We are going to do a bit more work together now, like we said.
More and more.
Not
a bit.
Exactly. More and more. And everybody that wants to do more work and that can, even if you don't like us, you can talk to Marie. She's nice. Everybody likes her. Or if you want, really, I really want to highlight this once again. And I keep saying that this is a call. All the brands, exactly. Let's do this. All the ones that want to do growth, let's look at your numbers. I will put out there, you contact us on Instagram, you say, okay, I saw the podcast, I want to get finance, these are my numbers. I guarantee we will answer. Definitely. How much time you take. And I know you will jump on it. Like you said, if you have opportunities to provide people with funding, you will.
That's what we're looking for.
Exactly.
So yeah, thanks a lot, Laureen.
Thank you, Laureen. Thank you for coming.
Thankful. I love the conversation.
Oh, my pleasure.
I'm looking forward to doing more of you.
Same. And we do it for the industry, like you said, for the culture. Big up, exactly. Thank you, everyone. And see you in the next episode of the podcast. And if you found this helpful, please share it with any creative that might like it. Whether they are in fashion, beauty, or anything else, we think this is relevant.